Great careers are not accidents, they're journeys built through clarity and intent. In every industry, there are such journeys that reveal true leadership, sacrifice, risk, and purpose. I'm Dirk, and this is The Pitch and the Catch, where we dive into choices, changes, and the careers they create. Welcome. Today we're joined by a leader who's redefining what it means to innovate in a commodity-driven world. Jason Wolcott, currently holding the position of Chief Commercial Officer at Twin City Foods. With a bachelor degree in microbiology, Jason brings over 2 decades of global experience across food, agriculture, and commercial leadership, including building international sales networks, developing world-class teams, and leading growth strategies across 5 continents and more than 50 countries. In today's conversation, we'll explore what it takes to thrive in a competitive and quickly evolving commodity market, how companies can innovate beyond price, use AI and data analytics to deepen customer relationships, and build sales teams that can think strategically and act entrepreneurially. Jason also shares his philosophy on balancing will, skill, and permission, a perspective focused on empowering teams to take smart risks and lead with purpose. So, if you are in a business where competition is strong and differentiation is everything, this conversation will give you a fresh look at how innovation, talent, and data can change the game. Jason, welcome. How are you today?
I'm doing great. Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to talk about things with you and kind of learn and grow together.
Yes, absolutely. I vividly remember our first conversation from last week. Actually, before we dive into everything leadership and talent and all, I do have to admit the most interesting thing for me is always what people do and how their product touches people. And in your case, you're bringing food onto American consumers' dinner plates.
It's a lot of fun because you get on an airplane ride and someone asks what you do, right? And you talk about, hey, you know what? I work with a team and we sell frozen corn. We sell frozen peas, right? And we work with many of the leading retailers across the country. And we also have a nice business where we're the leading frozen corn supplier to Japan.
Ah,
Right.
yes.
And so it's really interesting. Like, I've chosen a career where I've worked in agriculture and food for a long, long time, and people always have to eat. And that's the way I look at it, right? And so there's always going to be an opportunity there to have a job and have a career around feeding people. So it's a lot of fun.
Yes. Yeah. It is much easier to explain probably as if you're somewhere deep in a B2B environment and you're making a product that again is made to make other products.
Well, it's really fun. I tell my team all the time, it's like, listen, at least you're not selling some software interface that's going to be obsolete in 18 months, right? People are always going to eat. And we happen to sell some products that are well received all across the world, right? So it's a lot of fun.
So, and then I'm asking as a consumer, so I especially funny you mentioned the frozen corn and the frozen peas. That's my breakfast because the moment you cross your face, right? You cannot touch anything white flour. You have to you have to replace it with some vegetables. And I usually make it every morning with egg and some cheese. It is always the question, am I doing something healthy for me if I have the stuff frozen and not, I mean, I have my answer, but it would be interesting to hear it from you.
No,
Not like fresh produce from ideally from the market. That's
right.
kind of what we have in our heads. But I still reach into the freezer and get the frozen peas.
It's really interesting when you talk about fresh versus frozen, and this is an interesting discussion. When you have a fresh produce, when you pick that, it starts to degrade through the whole supply chain. So you think about, oftentimes a lot of these products are picked across the country, not necessarily right in our neighborhood. We'd love them to be in our neighborhood, but this doesn't always work out that way. So that product is losing its nutritional value, its flavor, all the things that make it great as it goes through the supply chain. When I'll give you an example, frozen peas. When we harvest our peas, we have the largest pea harvesting fleet in North America.
Wow.
And when we harvest our peas, those peas go from being cut and harvested in the field to being frozen within 3 to 4 hours, maximum 5 hours. And that's a coordinated effort with a large team making sure that this happens day in and day out during the pea harvest. And that pea harvest window is very short. It's only about 6 to 8 weeks in the early summer, a late spring in the Pacific Northwest where
Yeah.
we grow our peas. And so when you have those frozen peas that come from us, they're at the peak of their freshness when we harvest them. And then when you eat them, they're the peak of their nutritional value. They're at the peak of their flavor. Every bit about them is at their best. And they haven't degraded through the supply chain because they've been frozen.
Yes.
There's there's a there's a balance there. The other great thing is you can eat them at any season, right? You don't just have that 6 weeks where the peas are good and then there's no more peas, right? Because we freeze them, you can eat them all year round.
That's a great pitch. So here we go. So we've already done
Well, I was telling you something, right?
the pitch part of our conversation.
Yeah.
No, but so, and that's again, and then everything's about. And I don't know if your company of Twin City Foods does the organic side of things.
So we are the leading organic supplier for frozen corn and frozen peas and frozen carrots, and other commodities as well. But those are where we're the leading. And we supply, and I don't want to mention any customers' names, but we supply the largest organic non-GMO retailer. We supply their brand.
Okay, largest organic non-GMO I can think of a couple of names here. I mean, I don't want to start guessing, but I guess everybody wants wholesome foods. And this is, again, it's also interesting, me as a consumer, what makes a pea an organic pea?
Well, there's rules that we follow by local governing bodies in the United States, and even in the state of Washington where we grow our peas. And so there are limits to the crop protectants that you can put on there, and we make sure we follow those rules exactly. And so there's certification that's done, and the farmers that we work with, the growers, supply certification that they follow the rules exactly as intended. And a lot of it too involves having access to the right soil that you can be successful. And one of the great things is where we do the majority of our growing is in the Columbia Basin. And this is in
Yeah.
Eastern Washington, Eastern Oregon. One of the great things about the Columbia Basin is that we have a lot of control because it is really a desert. And we have the Columbia
Yes.
River going through there, and we're able to irrigate our crops exactly
Yes.
how they need to be irrigated. And the soil there is fantastic. This is volcanic soil, right? You remember Mount St. Helens? And 19,
Yes. Yes,
I
I
mean,
actually do.
I
I no,
lived near them when I was
I
really young.
do.
Yeah, you
Yes.
figure
Wow.
out it's all that volcanic, and that's been going on for centuries and centuries. All that volcanic ash goes to Eastern Washington and Eastern Oregon, and then it's great soil for growing crops. So because there's a consistency in the weather, because in the shadow of the Cascades, it's a desert area with very little rain or moisture, and so it's just a great place to grow crops, and that really allows us to be able to have consistent quality year after year, and also allows us to have a great organic crop just because of the location and the consistency and the environment and everything involved there.
Nice. I'm going to continue eating my organic peas, and probably from time to time I probably have a batch that's from you. There's a Growing up in Germany, so kids don't like vegetables. I think that's unless you're in
Lots of
Japan,
cultures on that one.
right? Unless you're in Japan, where kids say my favorite snack is a broccoli, which is very different. I do remember my mother telling me, "Eat your peas," and I was like, there's trains, there's like there's tears running over my face. I don't want to eat my peas. No, here we are,
Yeah.
Jason. When we had the quick get to know last week, I asked you about the most burning issues, or let's say challenges. No, let's get over to the business side a little bit.
Yeah.
You said two things. And I want to explore those two things. You said number one is, and we can explore them
Yeah.
together or in step by step. You said number one is it is existing in a commodity market and finding ways how to stand out in a commodity market. I think even being the largest pea um, harvester or producer in North America doesn't protect you from being a commodity. It's still a commodity. And number two is, I just want to lay these out and then we can dissect them, and then you said talent. That's the second big challenge. So why don't we start with the commodity piece? Of course, there's a general conversation about, because I said every product is a commodity. How do you stand out in a commodity market? What are your experiences? You've been in this industry for very long.
It's a really good question, and it's something that strategically we discuss as an organization often. Like how do we differentiate ourselves?
Yes.
And one of the most important ways to me is service and being willing to do things that maybe your competitors aren't willing to do. Some of the more difficult specifications, for example. And so if you talk about service, it's important that you're consistently supplying and fulfilling orders as they happen. And what's really interesting about our commodity market is we have a busy time of year. When you get into the holidays, you look at the consumer data. We'll talk about data later on, but we get Nielsen data, right? And we can understand what's
Yep.
happening at the POS with the POS, like what's happening at the point of sale with consumers. There is a huge, huge lift in the month of November around Thanksgiving in our commodity market.
Oh,
So it's important to understand that and be ready to fulfill those orders when those come in from customers. And so and I don't know if you want to go here, but one of the big changes that we made as we entered this organization is we started really looking at our forecasting and developing forecasting tools and understanding how do our customers order and why do they order, when do they order, and then making sure that we're prepared to fill their needs at the time when they have their most need, right? And so that's an important part of in a commodity market is you've got to be consistent in your service and delivery because there's a USDA quality that most suppliers can meet very, very easily.
yes. Funny you mentioned that because in the introduction, I've mentioned AI because you and I touched on this. So I remember interviewing the CMO for a company that doesn't exist anymore. It was AIPC, American Italian Pasta Company. So white label pasta producer. And they were also going to Nielsen. And I remember from the conversation, I said, we need Nielsen to be smart about what we do. Maybe, and because it's the second time I hear about Nielsen, and I mean, it's probably public information, but
Yeah.
what do you use Nielsen for? So that let's go to that data piece. I think that's an important part about in the commodity market, you have to be smart about what you do. And you mentioned them. So how do they make you smarter?
So one of the things is you can see order patterns over a season, right? It's very
Order
important to
patterns.
understand. So you're looking at order patterns. And then what's really important is each customer, so each retail chain that you sell to, for example, they are actually going to approach it slightly different. So you have to take the order patterns
Hmm.
that you see from, and I say orders, I really should say sales patterns. So when consumers are buying the product and match that up with that actual customer, when do they order? Based on their flow. So each of them keep different levels of inventory.
Yeah.
Each of them have a different type of supply chain. Often they're using some type of automated ordering system that looks at their inventories and says, oh, we need to order now. And those are not foolproof. I mean, there's events that happen that influence those. And the other thing that's really interesting that we're trying to get our handle on as are now leaving COVID era. During
Hmm.
COVID, patterns changed,
Yeah.
and we really haven't settled down yet to what those new
Mm.
patterns are going to look like. I think we're just starting to see those new patterns now, but we still have a lot to learn. So if you look at Nielsen data, we're looking at sales at the store level, what's happening, trying to correlate that with orders. When do our customers order based on those sales patterns and try to put a seasonality on that and understand that so we can build a forecast. I mean, we can
Yes.
call the customer and say, hey, when are you going to order? But oftentimes they're relying on their automated systems and they don't necessarily have all the details right in front of them, right? So we have to tie those pieces together and make good decisions about when to produce and how to produce and which items. We have a made to stock system on for certain customers and certain items that we never want to run out of, right? And so we're making sure that we're forecasting appropriately to meet those
Hmm.
needs. And
Can
so that's one way to use the Nielsen data.
can your customers get from you peas around the year, or are you sold out at some point in time until the new harvest?
So that's a good question because the other thing is we take our forecast. Like right now, we're forecasting for the next 18 months,
Yes.
right? And so what we're going to do now is we're going to start planting our crop for next spring. So we're going to be looking at we
Oh,
want to make sure that we're forecasting enough and we're building in growth as we go into other channels besides retail. And we want to make sure that we plant enough peas, for example, to make sure we fulfill all the needs of our customers plus the growth they're looking for.
here we go.
We never want to run out. And so we actually will
Mm.
forecast and take a little risk and grow a little bit above what we're forecasting to make sure we have plenty there. But then if you miss that, unless say the economy has a downturn or something. And there's a lot of things as we sell private label, we don't control, maybe
No.
they promote less, right? We don't control the movement as much as we'd like to. Um, you get left with extra inventory, and then you're paying storage costs beyond
Or
what you financially planned, right? So there's a balance there that we're always looking for as we do this. So understanding the seasonality, understanding the customer's ordering patterns, understanding, taking basically a guess at what economic conditions are going to be like, right? And trying to also plan for growth within our organization that we hope to achieve. We're planning a crop, which then
yeah.
we're going to sell. And so we really hope to never run out of a commodity. The other thing is, while we have a very competitive marketplace with our competitors, right? We also are not, we'll work together. If someone's missing a commodity, we'll sell to them. They'll sell to us. And we have some competitors that actually
Yes.
grow in different part of the country. So they grow different commodities than we do. So we'll sell them corn and they'll sell us okra, for example. So we work together to make sure that it gives us an opportunity to use excess crop and they can fulfill their needs, and vice versa. And we make sure that we're successful, but at the same time, we're not going to be punitive towards our competitors, right? We try to live in a nice world, because someday we may be the ones that are short a commodity, and they'll work with us, right?
Yes. So basically, understand that it's all about commodities. So you said it's all about service level in the first place.
Yeah.
So service level means, the customer orders something and you can get it to the customer at the right price at the time they desire. I guess that's the definition of service level. And so understand the data. So there's a lot of planning, and you have lead times. So
Yeah.
the peas need to grow. Whatever corn, anything. So it needs to grow. So your lead time is probably it's a year basically.
Yeah. Well, and our crops are only grown once a year, right? There's
Yeah.
some parts of the world where you can do a continuous crop,
Yes.
but the crops that we sell are only grown once a year, right? So we have
Only
to be,
grow once a year.
we're actually planning, 18 months in advance. What does that look like? Because we just finished harvest recently. We just finished carrots. It's our last,
Yes. Carrots.
right? And so now we are planning, all right, what's going to happen in the spring so we can grow and harvest and then be able, this crop has to last until next September, right? So we got to plan from now all the way through we have to be planning well ahead. So we try to have a rolling calendar that we look at going forward as we do our crop planning and forecasting. And it's not exact. It's never exact, but we try to have a pretty good idea.
It's never exact. You might be sitting on a lot of carrots at some point in time,
Exactly.
or anything,
Yeah.
and then you probably have to convince consumers eat your carrots or eat
Exactly. Yeah. No,
because we have so much of them.
yeah, no, it's exactly. Or what we'll do is the next year we'll say, oh, we know what, we're going to plan a little bit less, right? Because we have some carryover inventory that we'll use, right? So that's the great thing about frozen, is it does have a pretty long shelf life and gives us some flexibility there. Unlike some of the you go back to produce, there's a lot of waste because you overproduce and the economy kind of goes slow and people don't buy as much. There's no outlet for that, right? Other
Yes.
than the freezer.
And this is a just a business related strategy. I mean, the world population is still growing. We know we cannot feed 9 billion people on meat. It's not possible. The world, I mean, a great part of the population on the world population has to be vegetarian or has to have a vegetarian diet. If we want to feed 11 billion people, at some time we have to step away from beef probably, because these are resource intense. This is resource intense food. Here's my question. Wouldn't it be a good business strategy to make as much as you always possibly can at a price point? And then if America doesn't have need for carrots, peas, or corn in this one season, sell it somewhere else. I'm just thinking growing global economy and population.
Yeah,
I
I
know
think
that's a big question. I don't know if you have
well,
an
this is
answers.
this I do have answers on this one, because this is really, really interesting. We grow more food in the United States than we could possibly ever consume.
Okay. Uh,
And
unless
one
we all go vegetarian.
well, yeah, even then it's
Even then.
it's just there's a lot of interesting economic things going on, and incentives and subsidies and things going on that just make it that way, right?
Yes.
And so there's if you look at some of the inventories, and USDA has a lot of, you go back to data, there's a lot of data on this. There's plenty of food to feed everybody in the United States, and then some. What's really interesting is we are actually, for the first time over the last, let's say, 5 years, we're dealing with competition from Europe. It becomes about supply chain. You can ship product from Europe via boat to the East Coast of the United States less expensively than I can ship product from the West Coast to the East Coast,
That's crazy. Yeah.
right? And the other thing that's really interesting, Europe, for whatever reason, has always been more competitive price wise than the United States and the commodities I've always dealt in. Right. So there's that. Now, what's really interesting is we're seeing countries like India actually landing product on the East Coast of the United States as well, frozen corn. And obviously, there's a difference in quality. But at some point, if you start looking at food service, when you look at some distributors, some restaurants, they need a plate filler. They're not as concerned about quality. And so it's an interesting competitive dynamic. And then as we sell frozen corn outside of the United States, to say Japan is our biggest market, but we also sell to many other markets. All of a sudden you have product from India, for example, or product from Thailand, product from China. And their cost for labor is different at a whole
It
nother
is.
than we're ever going to achieve. And so they'll come in sometimes 30, 40% below us in price. And that all of a sudden you'll have one of our customers like, oh, wait a second, I got to look at that. I can't pass that up. Now the quality's not quite the same, but I'm going to tell you over time, the quality is improving. And so I think you talk about population growth. I think that the world as it currently is very much primed to be able to supply food, the basics, to a growing population. Where we have issues is supply chain,
Yes.
right? So can that frozen product get to where it needs to go? Are there political and um, instability that causes that supply chain to not be successful? Or is there a war, for example? When you look at where you see famine and starvation, it's oftentimes around war and political
Yes.
unrest. So I think that the world has plenty of agricultural know-how. The yields have improved in the growing immensely over the
Yeah.
decades, right?
Yes.
As the technology has improved and we've learned more about how to grow and the successful things that we need to do to grow, we're poised to be able to feed a growing population in the world, all around the world. And that's one of the challenges back to having a commodity is that there's plenty of frozen corn out there to meet the needs. So how do you differentiate against your
Yeah.
competitors, right? And those are the questions that I have specifically in the US. And then how do you grow new channels, right? So those are things that are on my mind constantly is how do we do that?
So the it's more common. I have a question towards the channels, but here's something I've learned is the transport is something we always have to think about because the distances are so large. You said it's
Yeah.
harder for you to get something to the East Coast than Europeans getting it to the East Coast. And maybe they can do it in a more sustainable way than you can do, which
Mhm.
is also consumers. I mean, for example, I don't buy apples if it says product from New Zealand. I
Yeah.
just don't want an apple that has traveled half around the world into my grocery store. So that's the so the thing I've learned is so you're in I know you're in Idaho, but I think it's the same. The gas that you get at your gas station is actually Canadian gas
Yeah. Absolutely.
there's no way to get the gas into the northwest United States. The gas that the Canadians here use is U.S. gas, which comes into Newark Harbor, is being processed here and then shipped upstate.
Right.
So it's quite interesting. So Canada has enough gas. It's Canada and United States has the same issues on some things. Canada is too big to get the gas across the country, and so we have these cross-border exchanges there, which are crazy.
Yeah. No, it's to me, I find all that fascinating, right?
Yeah.
And I think that there's, if you look at the future, do you look at innovation, I think supply chain innovation is going to be really, really important. You start looking at some of the ideas that you're seeing. I was watching a video on social media today talking about building a tunnel across the Atlantic, for example, and be able to ship product basically on a magnetic train. I don't know if you've ever been on a magnetic train that goes 200, 300 kilometers an hour. It's pretty intense, right? It's a lot of fun. And you don't even realize it at the time. It just feels smooth as you're going, right? But if you imagine shipping product, and so I think that in the decades, maybe past my lifetime, there's going to be answers in supply chain that make a difference. But in the meanwhile, we have what we have, right?
Yes, and we've gotten so much better and so much faster.
Yeah.
And you're dealing with the complexity of getting frozen products. So
Yeah. No, it's
you cannot have it get warm in between and freeze again. It's got to be frozen all the time.
yeah.
So you said something about channels. You have to create more channels. And so what are and that's also related to the commodity question, because I think in the commodity market, channel is one part of your strategy. So
Yeah.
which channel they're gonna, how you play the channel. So when you said we're gonna have to evaluate or explore new channels, what would this look like? So what's your current channel, and what would be an innovation on the channel side?
That's a really good question. So when I try to keep things simple because
Yeah.
you can go, oh, there's 15 different channels. So I say, all right. So I divided our business into 3 channels. So number one, we currently sell into retailers.
Hmm.
Um, for the most part, we're selling their branded products. So we're a private label supplier to
Yeah.
them, right? And we sell to many of the top retailers, and it's a big chunk of our business.
And sorry to interrupt, your private label, because not everybody's in that. Private label means they don't know you. It's just your product, and they put something else on top of it in
So
terms of.
it's the brand from the retailer.
Yes, it's the retailer. It's like,
When I say private label, it's the retailer's brand, right?
and I don't know if these are your customers, but it would be, I go to Trader Joe's, I buy something that's called, that says Trader Joe's, but it's another company making that product.
Absolutely,
Yes.
absolutely.
That's private label.
So that's private label, yeah. So then I divide. There's 2 other channels, and there's a lot of sub channels of the way I define. So the other one I define as food service.
Food service, like
And so,
Cisco, for example.
yeah, like Cisco, for example, or U.S. food service, or even you look at restaurant chains.
Hmm.
One years we've successfully into one of the top chains that sell corn, for example, right? And
Yeah.
we're successfully in there already, starting to expand that business. Um, and then the other channel would be, we call it international, right? So selling product outside, which we have a nice business in Japan, right? And we're trying to
Hmm.
expand to other parts. Because one of the issues with being so focused with retail and with Japan, there's a couple things there. As the economy goes ups and down, we don't control many of the outcomes because we're just on the ride with the retailers because
Yes.
their brand, not ours. So I can't
No.
go promote, right? I
No.
can't do anything there. So it's really what this does by going into diversified other channels is it provides a consistency to our business.
Yes.
So historically, as the economy improves, people eat out more
Hmm.
and they're spending less in retailers, the business could dip. But if you have a balance between
The
food service and
chance.
retail, then as people eat out more, you're going to benefit from selling the food service. When the economy gets rough and people eat out less, they're going to spend more at retailers. Then if there's a balance there, your business can be more consistent over time.
Yeah. So they get your carrots, nevertheless.
Exactly.
Either they cook them themselves or they have them in the restaurant. That's kind of, so you have to offer your produce basically in that, and in every way the consumer can get your product, either cooked by someone else or cooked by themselves.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And the other part, you talk about diversifying our business as well. Japan's been a very strong market for us since the
Hmm.
1970s. And we'll have a lot of history there. But the Japanese economy is kind of stalled, has been for some time.
Has been for decades, basically. It's
And
yeah.
there's not an out that I see. I'm
No.
not an economic expert, right? But there's not an
No.
out with
No.
their declining population. And
Yes.
they just brought on a new leader, right? Just like this morning, I think everything was finalized, but it's not a big change from what has been for the last 2 decades. So I don't see an out there. So I need to be able to protect our business by selling to other markets besides Japan as well. Right. So that's the challenges that we're facing as we try to diversify the business.
I can see there's a curious experience I've made with sending products to Japan. So I grew up in the pharmaceutical industry,
Right.
and especially on the packaging side, the even if the machine wraps everything up, puts the package, on a pile, and then it puts it
Yeah.
in a bigger card box, ships it off. The quality the machine makes in terms of what the package look like, and think of like a you know typical carton, is not good enough for Japan. So we had to have a Japan corner, is
Yeah.
what we called it. People wearing white gloves, and then they were taking the drugs from the machine, softly, and then softly, doing like it was like a Tetris thing, like, putting them in the boxes and then sealing everything off, because the moment something has like a little dent, like, something has like a little corner dent or anything, you cannot sell it in Japan. It's impossible to sell it. Do you have that? Does this, I mean, you're probably only shipping product, not packaging. I don't know, but does this apply to you too? That you need to be very careful with Japan and their.
It's a culture. Packaging is a cultural thing in
Yeah,
Japan.
it is.
We're presenting a gift. You're presenting yourself to them. They expect it to be perfect. And even
Yes.
in the B2B food service world, the cases need to arrive in perfect shape.
Yeah. Even in B2B, even for the dispatch, even for that's interesting.
I have an interesting story. I worked for an organization one time and we sold actually out of Alberta into Japan.
Oh, yeah.
And it was a very good business product, high quality product, right? And we were having problems with the containers would arrive and the packaging would not be right. And our customers were very upset about that. And
Yeah.
the folks at the plant didn't understand this, right?
No.
Like, you know what?
eh,
It's fine. It's like the case gets a little dent in it. Who cares? Or you know
Yeah.
what? There's a
They
flat.
do,
You know, it's fine, right?
but
And
they
so
do care.
finally, I asked permission to take the plant manager and the plant QA manager, to the operations manager, the plant manager, said, like, you know what? I need to take them to Japan with me for a week the next time I go. We're going to spend some time with this customer and other customer. And then we're also going to spend some time exposing them to the Japanese culture and explaining to them how things are received there. You go into the retailers in Japan, it's just a whole another level of experience on how they present things. So it was really interesting experience, and our complaints basically went from unacceptable at the Japanese level to zero after I took the team there so they could see like this is what's important and why it's important. And they were able to say, okay, we know what we can do to fix this. And they were able to fix it almost immediately. And it was a great experience. And so that is something you talk about. And maybe as we talk about innovation, I might talk about Japanese culture a little bit more because there's a lot to learn there. Opportunity to go and experience the culture of where you're selling and walking around that culture and being in it and understanding the why behind what you're doing had a huge impact to this business and help it improve overnight.
Yeah. That's a beautiful story. I'm trying to put it in perspective here because I think what you've done is you've shown people the deeper reasoning. So you've engaged them. You just didn't tell them what to do. You sold the idea. And this is I gotta find a way to express that. So you allowed them to experience themselves what actually is necessary, have the deeper emotional connection to, oh, this is what it feels like in Japan, and taking that back home, which is a totally different experience from just being told it's got to be neat. And the neatness, typically, because that's a cultural thing, if it's neat from my cultural understanding, it's fine.
Yeah.
Here's my constant, no, it's not after 15 years, and my constant frustration in the beginning is that, and this is just a fun story, this country runs on impossible measurements, like inch. This is an
Yeah.
inch. Yeah. Well, I don't want to put up my foot, but so
What?
this weird. So and then when we built this house and they built the kitchen, so the difference between the cover is also, but into for the granite that would reach the range from left and right. It was 4 millimeters in the back and the
Yeah.
gap, and it was 1 millimeter in the front. And then I asked the guy who installed it, I said, that's not even. He looked at it and said, it's even. And I'm like, no, that's not even. This is 4 millimeters. This is 1 millimeter. And I think it's because I have a word for it, which is called millimeter.
Mhm.
And as long as I have a word for it and can describe it, I can see it. But I asked him, what's the smallest, measurement you can see? And he said 3/16 of an inch, which is about 3 millimeters. So, and if that's the smallest you can see or that you can name, then this is your quality standard. Everything after under 3/16 of an
Oh,
inch
good.
it's all the same. It's all good. Yes. And and that's an experience that I had to make is if I ask people to work on a millimeter scale here, but they don't have words to express it, they can't work on a millimeter scale. So I remember the first guest we've ever had was a Swiss guy. Now imagine Swiss guy
Oh, yeah.
coming in. It's my good friend Stefan from Switzerland. He looked at my kitchen. He saw the gaps between the range and the granite. And he literally said, how can you live like this?
Get a bug in every day.
So, but I had to take the cultural step and understand these guys don't have a word to describe it. So for them, this is the best they can do.
Yeah.
But you taking people into Japan means you expose them to a different world. You said, I know our world is different, but that's their world, and we need to understand their world.
Yeah.
And I think if we take this as a general management philosophy, now if we go over um, to talent, I think that there's an underlying philosophy is you cannot operate in a vacuum. You need to go to the source and understand what's going on. Even when you work with a customer, you can't work offline with the customer just over the phone line. You need to go to the customer and understand how they operate.
No, it's really important. One of the changes that I made when I joined this organization was to bring a team in that felt very comfortable being with the customer. And
Yes.
so now we have team members all over the country. My expectations is that they are in the customer stores. So first of all, you got to be able to walk the stores. You got to
Oh,
look at how they're
yes.
how are they selling, and not only look at our own products, how are they selling other products?
Mm,
And we'll talk about packaging innovation. Packaging is a big deal.
yeah.
I think that's there's a need for innovation there. And you look at what's happening with other packaging and other types of products, and what's going on in the store. How are they presenting, and where are they being successful, and how does our product line up with them being successful, right? So you have to be in the store to understand that. You have to go back to the data, the Nielsen data or other data that you may have. You have to understand the data, what's happening, what are the cycles, what is the season, when are they doing promotions, how can you influence that? You have to understand that. And then he's like, what are the gaps that this customer may have compared to the rest of the market? And can you intelligently tell a story about the gap? Are they missing a pack size? Are they missing a product? Are they selling the wrong
Mm,
product? They should switch out this product and put in this other product. One of the things we do is blends. So we'll blend
yeah.
peas and carrots together, or we'll blend onions and peppers, and we'll put these blends together, and they need to be functional blends that lead to a recipe, right? And do the customers have the right blend? So those are all things we need to understand, and you can't learn that sitting in an office. I mean, you can get the data to help you a little bit, but you have to go walk the stores. And there are some retailers that are very successful right now in this marketplace, and we don't sell to them. One of them is, and I'll mention it, is Walmart, since they're not my customer. There's been a transition in Mart since COVID, and some things that they're doing that have really pushed the industry, and I think in a good way. But at the
Hmm.
same time, they've captured a market share they've not had before. They've captured a consumer that they've not had before. So you have to go in, what is Walmart doing right, that I can then tell the story to my customer to say, hey, here's an opportunity for you.
Mm,
You can support that, whatever that opportunity is, right? And so you go back to talent. You have to be able to hire people who feel very comfortable out in the marketplace, being able to quickly put together a story based on all the different data inputs that you get from walking the store, from the data information you may get from some table. You got to be able to have people who feel very comfortable going to a customer and helping the customer feel a little uncomfortable about their position, right? So, yeah, I hope
so,
that your
um,
question.
yes, and actually, it triggered a million other questions. So one of the questions we've had in our brief, so here at the team is, I'm looking at the question: can you share an example of how Twin City Foods have added value beyond the product itself? And you've answered that. So if you're taking best practice, in this case, for example, from Walmart, and offer it to your other customers, basically that is value beyond the product.
Yeah.
And which is, again, I guess, something that brings us back to the beginning of the conversation. It helps you stand out in a commodity market. Oh, these are the guys who came with the idea to position the mix somewhere else or presented it in a different way. You came with a different package size because you had the data that customers prefer to buy smaller package sizes or larger package sizes. I can see that, but interesting for me is because you've mentioned it. And I know the Walmart story since COVID, and Walmart's become the nation supplier for basically everything. It's the largest employer in many states. It's the
Right.
largest retailer for everything in many states. And I did my research. 10 years ago, you wouldn't see any high-end customer cars, like as in Range Rover or anything, in front
Yeah.
on the Walmart parking lot, and now you see them. Now it's not a shame. You don't have to be shameful anymore. Go shopping to Walmart's with your Range Rover.
Yeah.
So apparently they did something and they expanded their customer base. So just let's open a small window from your perspective, because you've mentioned, what did they do? What did they change?
I'm going to tell you the biggest thing is around being able to access their goods digitally,
Uh,
right? I can order online. I don't have to actually go in the store. So for a small fee, they'll deliver to my house,
yes.
right? I can go in. It was really interesting. I was in a Walmart this week. They had a whole section of their parking lot set aside for, hey, I
Cur-
ordered online and I'm going to pull up and someone's going to bring it out to me. I don't even have to go in the store. And the third thing, this is something I've noticed recently, the quality of their produce and of their products is at a different level than it used to be.
Mhm.
And
It is.
I'll give you a very specific example. I used to work in the blueberry industry for a company that developed blueberry varieties. And these blueberry varieties are next level. We're talking large fruit, crunchy, and has a sweetness that's at a different level. And these varieties have been developed at all chill levels. So you can grow them. You have varieties that grow on the equator. You have varieties that can grow closer to Mexico. You have varieties that grow in the
Maine.
West, in Maine or in Washington or British Columbia. A lot of them are being going into British Columbia right now. And you look at those varieties are new, and you would never in the past see those varieties in a Walmart. And I was in a Walmart within the past week, and I know the companies that bought those varieties and I know their brands, right? And you see those varieties now in Walmart and can't
Mhm.
necessarily find them at other grocers consistently. So you're seeing a difference in um their produce. And you walk into a store, you walk on the grocery side of a Walmart, first thing you're going to see is the produce, right? And uh, you know and as a consumer I want to select my own produce. I want high quality. That's important to me, and that's often where I choose to shop based on that. So
Yes.
back to where we just talked about how frozen is the way to go, right? But produce influences the consumer when they come to it.
Yes. Amazing. So I want to get as the last thing we talk about, because I feel like we could do a Joe Rogan podcast out of this and talk
For
for
3 hours.
4 hours. Yeah. So we have so we'll need to keep it manageable. But I have a larger philosophical question, but then I want to end somewhere on talent. So we have these effects. There's two interesting effects I see. Is number one is the Ozempic effect, is that people change their lifestyles. This is even in my local running store, they said they're selling less running shoes that are ultra soft, and people, because they weigh much less, they want to be closer to the street. That is the most. So the entire sneaker industry
Yeah.
is reorienting, is pivoting, and we have this conversation about the ultra processed foods, which I think is amazing that it finally gets into the public eye, into the conversation about what we're doing to us.
Yeah.
So let's assume the American consumers. So you have Japan and you're expanding, but are you expecting changes to your portfolio, to your company, with hopefully the country becoming more healthy, like truly healthy, not like fake healthy? It's like I have a pill that makes you more healthy, but eating actually healthy. Is this something that as a leadership team in the company, is this conversations you have on what does Ozempic and ultra processed food awareness do to our business?
Yes, that is a really good question. It is something we're thinking about. And a lot of it is we're looking at, there is a push for healthy. And you look at like our product, for example, it's really, really simple. We
Yeah,
actually just blanch the product and freeze it, right?
yeah,
We're
amazing. And then yeah,
not adding anything to it, right? So it's a real simple, clean product. And you look at the Ozempic effect, and I'll give you an example. I worked for decades in the French fry industry,
yeah,
right? And I don't know if the French fry, and I'm connected still, right? I don't know if the French fry industry has accepted the fact that this Ozempic is going to change people's eating
it
behaviors,
does.
and they're going to eat less. And when I'm eating less, let's say I want to eat healthier.
I eat more conscious.
When I'm going to eat less, I want to make sure that what I'm eating is quality and it's really good for me. And so there is going to be a shift. And when we look at the future of our company at Twin City Foods, we're looking at, hey, there's going to be a shift to healthy, and we're positioned in a good place. Now we just need to make sure we're in all the right channels with all the right customers so that the consumers has the opportunity to choose our product, right? But yeah, there is going to be a shift in how people shop and how people eat out. You're going to see the cost of these drugs go down. It's going to be more available to more consumers. You're going to see the form. So it's not going to be a shot. It's going to be a pill in the future. This is going to impact eating and consumer behavior for decades.
Yes.
And we need to start to understand that. And part of it is it's going to start with data. We've got to be able to look at the data, understand that's good. And then, all right, how do we shift our strategy to be aligned and ready to get the most out of what's going to come?
Wow. And this gets us to talent. And I don't want to rush the talent conversations.
Yeah.
By the way, our software, Jason, is going to run as long as we want. I hope it does.
Yeah.
Leading into talent is the idea of purpose. It is amazing, I guess, because even as a consultant, when we, for example, work for food industry, and we know in a little way we help feeding the population that feels good. That is something, I get up in the morning and I know I do something that contributes to a healthy diet, to a healthy nation. So that talent, and this gets us right into talent. So what's your perspective on talent? So you mentioned it a little bit. So your talent has to go out, talk to the source, go to the customers, don't operate in a vacuum. Basically be hands-on. If you describe the future of talent, not just in your industry, but how does talent contribute to making a company? And of course, we can also talk about you're successful. What's the role of talent?
So the first thing when I look at talent, I want to find someone who has a fit for our company, our culture, and a fit for the role. And I'm going to hire and also has potential to grow, right? And those are kind of things I look at. And so you look at a sales role, for example. I want someone who feels very comfortable, can walk into a room full of people and tell a story.
Okay. Yep.
And they get energy from being with people, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's where you got to start. If you don't have that, it's going to be a challenge for them. I can teach someone, and they have to have, and it's hard to evaluate this, but you want to have someone who has capabilities to grow as well. That's why I go back to that potential thing, because I can teach them analytics. Example, I was just, I have a really strong sales leader, and we were texting back and forth this morning. He's like, I want to do Excel training for the sales team, because we hired based on they can walk in the room and tell a story and they feel very, very comfortable. And they have no problem picking up the phone and calling somebody, right? They're not
Yes.
freaked out. And then
Yes.
two is a generational thing. The younger generation, some people I've noticed have trouble picking up the phone and calling people, but it's not just a generational thing. I see it with some of the older generation, but I want people who feel very comfortable picking up the phone, talking to someone, have no problem telling them a story, can walk into a room full of people and be able to come out and know, like, what's that person's kid's name? What's their dog's name? What's their grandkid's name? You know,
Yeah.
how do they start their career? What kind of jobs have they done? We want people who can come in and do that. And I'll teach them analytics. I'll have support for them on all the other areas of the business. So that's what we're looking for in the sales team. You go back to talent too. One of the first things I did when I joined Twin City Foods is bring a data guy in
Yeah.
who really understands not only how to analyze the data, but what are the tools that we need to build and make this successful. And so you have that balance of, I'm hiring salespeople who can go into a room and tell the story and be able to feel comfortable with that. And I have a data guy who then can support the sales team and make sure they have the information that they need to be able to be successful. So yeah, when you look at what are the roles, how do they work together? How does that fit in with the culture of your company that you're trying to build? Let's say you're trying to transition that culture and shift that culture. What are you trying to build? And you hire based on the culture that you're trying to try.
Yes. And just because that's fascinating. So shift the culture from where to where.
So it's shifting a culture of, I'll do this reporting the news versus making the news. So there's a culture of, hey, here's
Mhm.
a report. This is what happened. And yeah, we can go and explain it really well. Hey, our sales were up, our sales were down, and this is what caused that. I
Mhm.
want to shift it to a culture of, hey, I'm looking forward and I'm seeing what's happening. We talked about Walmart, for example, and Walmart's not our customer. How do we go to our customers and help them be successful so that we can make the news? We're going to be successful, these customers, and this is the three things that I'm going to do to help this customer be successful. Or these are three things we're going to do to help this channel be successful. Or here's the three things that we're going to do to help this organization be successful. We're going to be making the news and driving the business forward rather than letting the business happen to us. So that's one aspect of culture.
And if you're making the news, you have ideally Walmart's reporter team come out to you and film you, which is just what you want. You want them to come out to you and say, "What are the news that you're making? We heard about you."
Yeah, no, and it's not just the sales team. The leadership team at Twin City Foods is doing this in a lot of ways, and we probably won't have the time to talk about, a culture of continuous improvement,
Yes.
allowing decision making down to the lowest level. Someone on the processing or packaging floor is able to make decisions to improve the business and make the little changes every day to improve. Right. And communicate that throughout the organization. We're developing what's called a Kaizen culture, back to Japanese culture, a culture of continuous improvement. And not only is that happening in our operations and production side, but that's happening on our sales side as well. We're looking at what can we do to improve ourselves each day? How can we improve our process? How can we shorten the time it takes to process an order, for example? How can we shorten the time that it takes from a customer coming to us a request so we can get back to them with a proposal, a price proposal, for example? Those are all things that we're working on, always trying to improve and get better at what we do.
That would be, I don't want to open another can of worms that takes us another 20 minutes in. I would almost say, but let's stay there for a moment, because now we're getting to the real catch piece. So Kaizen is an old concept.
Yeah.
Kaizen was framed by two McKinsey. No, it was developed in the Japanese industry. Then in 80s and 90s, we caught on. And I personally would consider Kaizen a homework that everybody needs to do, and it's established knowledge. It's not, the Kaizen is not new. Kaizen means basically, and everybody's doing Kaizen in one form
It's
or
a lot
another.
of work.
Let's hope they do. So Kaizen is something that gets you to the door, but not through the door in the 21st century. Because Kaizen is not what makes you stand out. You can hire Kaizen experts. Of course, you need the culture to it, needs a little bit of time. But Kaizen is a solved problem. Sounds weird, but who is in this world knows it. So I think the Kaizen piece is only the foundation of your strategy of world domination with peas, carrots, and everything.
Right.
Because here's what I think. We're all spoiled by Amazon. And that means I order something, within seconds, I get the order confirmation. It's usually there next day. Any company in the world that serves its customer has to live by that standard. Even if Twin City Foods, oh no, we send out the order confirmation within the week. And then, yeah, you're laughing. But this is the Amazon standard we're living in. So, and I think Kaizen is that gets us to the Amazon standard. But that's what other companies are doing too. And I feel like what I've learned, and feel free to disagree with me. I think the parts that lets you truly stand out among competitors is being even smarter about the data, being more forceful and more energetic on the forefront of the business while having great service level. Would you agree to this, or would you fight me on that? I'm just curious.
I think it's very insightful that there is a foundational aspect that we're trying to develop, right?
Yeah.
We have to have that just to be in the game.
Just to be in the game, to
Just
the
to be
door.
in the
Yes.
game.
Yes.
We have to have that, right? To be in the game. And then it's what do you do with it at that point, right? And that's, you talk about being able to tell the story. And the other part of it is having the relationships in the industry to be able to make those connections to tell a story. And it's challenging for a sales team. I mean, I'll just talk about sales. Many of the suppliers rotate their folks on the buying side and the category management side so that those relationships don't get too strong. So you're
Mhm.
always building a new relationship with someone in this industry.
Yes.
And you have to have talent that feels very comfortable with that. Like, oh, a new buyer, I got to start again. And that's okay, right? But you have to have that. If you have that foundation, then you can build up that relationship and have those discussions and tell the story. And it's understanding the customer and their gaps and helping fill those gaps that make the difference.
Yes.
And if
Yes.
you don't have that foundation of continuous improvement, that foundation of really looking at internally, then you can't fill those gaps.
Yes. And that foundation makes sure that your salespeople have basically product to offer, but two others offer the product too. This
Yeah.
is the point but then comes the extra 10%, why customer goes for white label A versus white label B.
No, and a lot of it is, it's really interesting. How quickly can you execute? That's also a big thing, because we had an opportunity a little over a year ago where a customer came to us and they needed to switch suppliers. And the
Okay.
question is, how quickly
Yes.
can you switch?
Can you onboard the customer and everything? Yes.
And so and we were great team effort, right? And we were able to very quickly transition this customer over to us, right? And it was all hands on deck, almost daily and weekly stand-up meetings to make sure that this was happening. And we had an individual on the sales team who really led this and did a great job. And so, you talk about what's that next level there. There are little things that you do to gain the business and gain confidence from that customer.
Yeah.
That's one of us. Like, how quickly can you execute? How quickly can you onboard? How quickly can you get the packaging right? Which is something sometimes completely out of our control. That's a whole other story. How quickly can you fit their demand into your work processes and get the product packed up and ready to ship?
And it is fascinating how we started talking about commodities standing out, and in the end we come back to it's the relationship with the customer. And I think if the customer sees the effort and sees the relationship, they give you some benefit of the doubt when you see, because I know packaging is changing packaging can be challenging. Sometimes you need to buy a new machine for a certain format and it can take 12 months. But customers know this. But when they see that you are making the effort and you're there from the relationship basically bridges the waiting period.
The other thing I'd like to be is, can we understand their needs before they do?
Yeah,
Come
that's a nice
along
one.
and say, hey, you really need to ship this packaging. And by the way, we bought this new machine that does that.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
So,
And you have to make sure it doesn't sound like you want to sell the packaging format for the new machine. That you have to, you're selling it because the customer, that's exactly what the customer needs.
It's what the consumer has said they're looking
Yeah.
for, right?
Yeah.
Like, and we could talk a whole segment on packaging as well, because I think that's where truly innovation is needed in our industry, not only from a sustainability standpoint, which is really, really important, right? How do we remove plastic from the whole equation, or at least use less plastic? The other thing, how does food waste play into this? And how much does food waste contribute to sustainable efforts versus the packaging? That's something that needs to be explored and understood as well. And that's about getting the right pack size.
Yes.
Right. And then really understanding the way people get product. We talked about Amazon. How do you ship frozen product to someone's door effectively, efficiently, sustainably?
And imagine you deliver it to their door, even if you get it frozen to their door, but it's 8 a.m, they all left the house and don't come back before 6 p.m.
What do you do?
Yeah.
Right. So those are all things that our industry needs to solve in the near future. To me, that is, you look at innovation, and I think that's one of the things that's going to come in the next 10 years is packaging innovation in the frozen world, right? How does that change?
Nice. I feel like we do have to have, at some point in time, we have to have a second meeting. No, definitely. Let me attempt a summary for today, but it's more like opening a door. So I'd say Jason's view, your view on innovation and talent highlights how companies can move beyond price and create real value through, of course, we talked about data, technology, packaging is one thing, but supply chain, talent, and strong customer relationships. And probably, if you mentioned whether you're leading a sales team, managing a supply chain, or steering a global brand, there's a lot to learn from you, I feel like. And because your journey spans, and you mentioned it spans continents. You've seen quite a few different examples from the food industry, and you've been exposed to constant change. So there's a lot to learn. And I feel like you're focused on building sales teams that blends data skills with strong customer relationships. Kind of it offers a roadmap for building a high performing team which is ready for the future. Because leadership is leadership in this space. It isn't just about competing. It's transforming how we think, sell, and how we grow. Um, this is kind of how it feels like. I don't know if that's a good summary from our call, but
that sounded really good. Actually, well done. Sometimes you get overwhelmed with all the transforming that you have going on.
Yes,
you really do. But it's often really good A lot of places I've worked don't do a good job of celebrating success, right? So it's really important. I often remind the team, where were we a year ago? Think back to the struggles we had last year, how much improvement we've made since then. And hey, we have a lot of improvement to go, but think back to where we were a year ago. And oftentimes that framework allows you to go, okay, yeah, all right, we're making progress. We're going to get there, right? And
Yes.
sometimes you get frustrated, like it's not going exactly how I envisioned it was going to go. It's, we're not quite where I want to be right now. And that's okay. Because I always say, if it was easy, we wouldn't be here, right? AI would be doing our job. So, right? AI, some robots, and they won't need us, right? So let's embrace how difficult it is, have confidence in ourselves that we can make this happen. And will it happen exactly as we plan out? No, but we'll be agile, we'll adapt, we'll make it work, and we're going to be successful.
Yes. And this is such an inspiring speech. We ended right here, Jason.
So
That is you ended on the highest note, celebrating success, not giving in.
yeah,
This is the best message as a summary from the amazing call with you. And I not just have the feeling, but I know we will see each other again, because I'm dying to talk about removing plastic from the equation, food waste. No, seriously, because that's stuff that's interesting for people, and how we involve your customers and their customers, basically consumers, into this whole conversation. It's a whole other conversation, but I'm looking forward to this.
yeah.
Jason, for today, I can't thank you enough.